Okay, hello. So this week we're doing like 1500-ish to 1800-ish. So we're edging towards the practical. We'll see. I'm gonna try and hit like next week. The goal is to hit the full diversity of opinions. That's the plan for next week. This week is still a little bit more like historical development kind of week. But I would say that like some of the people we'll see today are kind of like, this printed weirdly, are kind of like the core people. So I would like, they're going to be talking about all the sources we've seen so far, and everyone like moving forward into time is going to be touching back to them. So in that sense, like it's still important to learn it chronologically as much as we can. Because some of the people we're going to learn today are super important. I have felt like in the last two classes, I've always like pushed men to the end. So I'm going to like front men this time, especially because we're going to see there's this debate that's quite interesting about head covering for men that comes up in like the 14 and 1500s. Hi everyone, welcome. Grab source sheets from the middle. So we're going to start with Mahari Brona. He's in like the 1400s in Germany. So Ashkenaz is like on its way towards resurrection from the Black Plague right around now. And he and like Germany had it tough, right? Because like they started to die off in the Crusades, and then there were pogroms and whatever. Like it was always tough in Germany, but also like they did good stuff there too. It was a very like fruitful place for Jewish thinking. So this is the Mahari Brona. So he has a question from a yeshiva, it seems like. Maseh Beruvain. Ruvain is like John Doe in Jewish literature. Maseh Beruvain, Shahalach Begilui Harosh. So Ruvain walked around bareheaded, Mimnei Asara, in front of 10 people. Ba'achad min haTalmidim v'ra'a. One of the students saw him, and Michabo, and he told him, like, he yelled at him. He said, "You're not allowed to walk around with a bare head." V'lo ashkach alei, and the student, or the person who was walking around bareheaded, Ruvain, didn't care. V'nidah haTalmid leRuvain, and then the Talmud put him into chera, and he excommunicated Ruvain. So the question is, does the nidui stand? Does the nidui of this Talmud in this yeshiva in Germany, does it stand? And so the Mahari Brona responds, yes, this nidui stands. And then he says, now he's going to go back. We saw these sources at the end of the first session. So he's going to quote the Gemara in Kiddushin. Lo amran el Rav Kahana de Gavarabahu. I think actually this is one we didn't see. But there's a Gemara in Kiddushin where Rav Kahana, where like they're pricing out a head covering, and they say, for Rav Kahana, this head covering is expensive because he's a Gavra Rabba. He's like a big important person. And Rashi says, Pirush Rashi, Delo Azil Begilui Rosh, big important people don't go with their heads uncovered. But what you learned out from there is that Kuli Alma Lo. What you learn after that is that, important people cover their heads in Masachet Kiddushin, but unimportant people, men specifically here, don't cover their heads. Right, so Alma de Inkavida, right? So Kuli Alma, we say, the rest of the world, we say they're not going to be so careful about covering their heads. And this one we saw this rabbi who says, Titili de lo maske dal amo begilui arosh, you got to hand it to me, I never go 4 cubits with my head uncovered. And similarly, right, Hani mili liditu de be'eretz Yisrael habu v'habu maske hachi. So he also, and it seems from there that when he says, you gotta hand it to me, I never go 4 Amma without my head covered, what that reflects is that most people did go 4 Amma without their heads covered, right? Or else it wouldn't be a special thing that he did that. That's like his kind of special practice that he's better at than anyone else. But then the Mahari Brona says, okay, but that's all well and good for them. They're in Eretz Yisrael, and people went around with their heads uncovered. But Ana, now I'm in the underlined part, Ana de Dairinon bein ha'umot, we who live amongst the nations, v'inu azle begilui harosh, and the non-Jews go around with their heads uncovered, v'chashiv kechukot hagayim, and it's considered like it's like a law amongst them. Like you have to go around with your head uncovered. And we are only distinguishable from them through the fact that we do cover our heads. And so it seems like you're violating Dat Yehudi, men violating Dat Yehudi, if they do not cover their heads. That's kind of an amazing pivot, right? And then he's going to quote the Gemara in Ketubot, which talks about women, right? She goes out with her head uncovered, and she's considered like a violator of like the Jewish faith or Jewish communal norms. So this is the first time we've ever seen Dat Yehudit applied to men so far, and it's like a pretty fascinating thing. Like, oh, women have modesty norms? No, actually, says the Mari Bona, like, men also have modesty norms, and it comes together with Chukot HaGoyim, like, they do this, so we do not do that, and there's a Torah verse to hang that on, right? Don't follow in their ways. What does that mean? That means, like, when I interviewed here, fun fact, the Midrash was about Chukot HaGoyim, and it's like it's a very fascinating subject that we could spend a lot of time talking about, but he's saying it's not just about Dat Yehudit, it's also about not being too similar to Gentiles, but he won't let it just be Dat Yehudit, but it's still like this amazing move where he says like, yes, this is for Dat Yehudit is a concept that applies to men also, and in our community it's like a definitive and a way to like tell apart the Jew from the non-Jew is that the Jews cover their heads, and therefore it is essential. Right, and he says, Jews are discernible, like you can tell who's a Jew because they dress differently from the rest of the world, and that is like a positive and important thing for Jews to do. Right, so it's not just, oh, the non-Jews make us wear stars or hats or whatever, right? We see a lot of that in various places where Jews live throughout the Middle Ages, and it's, you can all imagine, we have Holocaust imagery in our heads, of course. But here he's saying, it's not about them tagging us, it's about us tagging ourselves. They dress like A, we dress like B, and because Jews set themselves apart, we're not supposed to be too similar to our surrounding cultures. They don't cover their heads, it's Dat Yehudit, you must cover your head. Which is, and to me, like, I think I said this in the first class, like, this speaks a lot to me personally of, like, I love being Jewishly identified through my clothing, and I think that head covering certainly accomplishes that for men who wear kippot, I don't know, in my ideal world, will someday accomplish that for women who wear this. Not so much in America right now, but who knows, fighting the good fight. Okay, so anyways, he ends up with saying, so since the student went to this guy and said, you have to put something on your head, and Reuben said back, I'm not going to, that makes him a heretic. And he's not Bikores. And therefore, when the student put him into Nidui, when he excommunicated him, that was the L'Shem Shemayim Nidui, and Afil Harav Tzarich Lidhog Bo Nidui. And so it was a Talmud, it was a student who put him into Nidui, and the rabbi needs to follow through. The teacher of the student should abide by the excommunication that the student enacted, which is like really interesting. And then he has a PS, so he signs it there, right? Ne'um Yisrael Mibrona, signed Yisrael Mibrona, but then he has a PS at the end, an Agav, where he says, by the way, if you're sitting, you don't need to cover your head. So that's just if you're out and about on the street or walking around. He doesn't say on the street, he means walking around. Because, and we did see it, right? I don't go for amot begilui harosh. So that means like if you're not going for amot or you're sitting, then maybe you can have your head uncovered. So that's like important in terms of, can you sleep without a yarmulke on or something like that? So he would say, yes, yeah.
For head covered right now, are we talking about a kippah or hat, or like is it assumed that one is wearing a kippah all the time and they're talking like the second covering?
No, I don't think it's assumed. I think we're talking about like any kind of anything on your head. Yeah. Okay. So now we have, this next topic is, the Maharshal, this is still about men, is talking about someone who has a headache. We're not really going to like dive into this, but this is something that is emerging kind of right now, and the literature around it hasn't fully been written yet. But there's a lot of women like in the world who wish they could cover their heads with a sheitel or a scarf or something, but can't because it causes them like serious debilitating migraines. And a lot of women who like, well, my like type A choice of head covering would be this, but like that is not an option for me because migraines, so then I end up doing this other thing. So I think that's like a more live issue in like the lived experience of Jewish women today than any text we'll look at kind of gives credence to. So it's interesting to see it showing up here for a man in the Maharshal. You have a man who has headaches from his head covering. But I would say like just my experience of friends and people who have come to me for guidance on this, like debilitating headaches caused by head covering is much less unusual than you might imagine based on the communal conversation around it. So I just wanted to like put that out there, flag it. If it happens to you, there's kind of guidance in two directions. So first of all, you could say, well, like it's hurting you, so you should stop covering your head. Or you could, if it's like something that's like really important to you to cover, and to figure out a way to do that, then there's also wisdom on how to cover your head in a way that would minimize your migraines. And in terms of like people who want to like 100% cover their heads, that can sometimes result in like extraordinarily expensive sheitels. But you can make sheitels that are very lightweight and that don't clip on anywhere, that just like sit fully like with velvet on the inside so they stay on. Anyways, fun fact. But there's like two paths for that, and it's a real thing, and it's like pretty serious. So I thought I'd bring it up. So we have this Tshuva of the Maharshal. We're back in men now. So the question is, someone who has headaches, can he sit and eat with his head uncovered? And the Maharshal goes the total opposite direction from the Mahari Brona. He's going to say, who says like you have to have your head covered all the time? He says, right? I'm surprised that people practice a prohibition on uncovered heads. Except for below tefillah, except for in times of tefillah, of prayer. And I don't really know where this comes from for them. Because we only see a prohibition in uncovered heads for women, and we literally just saw that, right? Because the Mahari Brona brings his evidence for Overet al Da Yehudi from women. And then, right, so Kedita Parakavidir, and when we see it for men, it's a midat chasidut, it's a pious practice, shalol lilech dalet amo begilui harosh, not to walk 4 cubits with their heads uncovered, v'dafka halicha dalet amo, and it's specifically walking, so it's a pious practice, and it's a pious practice to not walk 4 cubits, so what you're gonna, if you're sitting, like it's not an element, it's not relevant, right? So they're gonna quote again, Amar b'chanina titili de lo sagina dalet amo begilui harosh, and he says, like, that's clearly, right, this guy who says, you gotta hand it to me, I don't walk 4 amot with my head uncovered, it's clearly just a pious practice. That's not a way to teach halacha, right? The way to teach halacha would be, hilchata, ali teish, whatever, you know, like, you would say, it is the halacha, don't walk this way, or said so-and-so, usher to do whatever, right? Like, you don't, like, it's kind of told in this, like, agadic kind of, like, yes, I'm so from, look at me kind of way, which is a beautiful thing. Like, I said this the first time we learned that source, like, everyone should have the midat chasidut in their own life, that they're like, you gotta hand it to me, I never, you know, I always invite an extra Shabbos guest, I always set an extra place at my table, like you know, everyone should have something that they feel really good about in their religious practice, that's like an above and beyond kind of practice. I never pass a homeless person without giving them $1, like everyone should have this thing, but that doesn't mean that it's like, me'ikar din, like, yarig bal yavor, like, kind of halacha, it just means that that's a good thing to do. And so, and those are the sources in the Gemara, and so the Maharshal is saying, like, why do we practice? He's saying there's a practice that we never go out without our heads. We always have our heads covered. But like, where does it come from? And he brought that first source, and then he says, right, and then he says, okay, but Urai parakama de kiddushin. So I'm after the the dot 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 in the Hebrew, and I'm trying to figure out where I am. 1, 2, 3. I'm like 5 lines down in the English on page 2. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says you're not allowed to walk 4 cubits standing upright. Shnamar, Melokal Arts Kavodo, the world is full of God's glory. Rav Kahuna Braid Rav Yoshua Lo Maski Dalet Amo B'Gilui Harosh. Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yoshua, said didn't walk 4 cubits with his head uncovered. Amar Shechina L'mala Miroshi. And he would say that the presence of God is above my head. Mashma dafka bekomatz kufahu da'aser. And what this tells us is, right, so we have 2 different languages. We have Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says, Aser, it's prohibited to walk 4 amot bekomatz kufa. And then you have Rav Huna Breder of Yeshua, a story about him that he never walked 4 amot with his head uncovered. So what's the difference between Aser to do this versus, here's a story about this guy? Right, you have it right in this one little section, the distinction between like halachic language and midat chasidut language. Right, do people see that? You have a statement, Yeshua ben Levi says, Asar lalech dalet amo bekomaz kufa, versus Rav Huna Breder of Yeshua lo maske dalet amo begilui harosh. They're brought together because they both have to do with walking 4 cubits, and they kind of seem similar, and they're structured similarly, right? You have a person, you have a practice, you have a verse that backs it up, or like a reason why, at least. In the first one you have a verse, the second one you have a reason why. So they're taught in one breath, and they seem very similar, but they're actually, on a technical level, quite different, because one is prohibited, and one is a good practice that this guy did. And what the Maharshal is now going to say is, okay, the komaz kufa, standing up straight, that's a prohibition of al gilui harosh in bo iser. Ela Rav Huna hechmer atzmo mikoach midat chasidu. It's not there's no prohibition on going around with your head uncovered. It's just that Rav Huna was stringent on himself because he wanted to have this pious practice. And then he says about his own times, this is fun. ועכשיו הוא להפך, בקומה זקופה אינם נזהרים, ואדרבה, הגאים והעשירים הולכים נטויי גרון, ובגילוי הראש נזהרים. לא מחמת חסידות, אלא סוברים דאיהודיתו. And he says, now everyone does the opposite, right? Everyone stands up straight, and especially the prideful, wealthy people, they walk around so arrogantly, but no one walks around with their heads uncovered, not because they're so pious, but because they think, like, this is da'ihudit. That's like a pretty harsh criticism that he's leveling. He's saying, you crazy, arrogant people with your heads covered, but you're so arrogant. Like, it would be better that you weren't arrogant and also didn't cover your heads. That's like strong language from the Maharshal, and I cut out a piece here also where he like goes after basically people who like eat out in restaurants but cover their heads with the yarmulke. Which I think probably could relate also to our time, but not so, whatever. You got the point with this, so I didn't include it. But then he ends up with just saying, what can I do? The nation has, the community has basically practiced this as a prohibition, and therefore I can't go about telling people that it's permitted. And this is based on a Gemara in Nadarim, a Gemara in Nadarim, that there's like a really interesting sugya about whether you go, like I'm a rabbi from place X, I go to place Y, and I see everyone being like super frum and careful about this thing that's like not a real thing. Am I, rabbi from place X, allowed to tell the people in place Y, guys, that's not a real thing? Or do I have to say, no, they're so serious and careful about this thing, and I'm gonna let them be, and I'm not gonna be like moreh lehem heter. I'm not gonna like teach them that it's actually permitted, because they're like frum about this thing, and that's their way. And the answer is like you're not supposed to. Like you're supposed to like let them be frum about their thing. So he's gonna say, really, like I don't know how it came to be this way. Like there's not any real, like you can't. He's saying like I can't read the Gemaras to understand why people are so careful about head covering. And they're not careful about all this other stuff, which they really should be careful about, but I can't tell them. Like, it's not my job, or it's not my place to tell them, actually, it's permitted. So all to say, like he eventually gets around. I didn't include here his answer to the guy with the headache and whether he can like take his hat off or like what happens to him. Because also it's a very specific answer to that person who's like a teacher and he's worried that if he uncovers his head, then his students will uncover their heads, and it's this whole business. But anyways, but just to show like two diametrically opposed, right? The Mahari Brona who's like, this is Da Yehudi, and the Maharshal who literally says, I don't know how they got to assuming that this is Da Yehudi. That's like what he says right here, right? Sovrim Da Yehudi. They assume, they've like understood it to be Da Yehudi. That doesn't make any sense to me. But I'm going to go along with it because I'm not in a position to tell them that they're wrong. So that's all like in the 1500s. You have these like two radically different positions on head covering for men. Just to like carry it forward a little bit into the 1600s and 1700s. So the Taz says, the Taz is a commentator on the Shulchan Aruch. So until now we've looked at, last time we talked about the different genres, so responsa, codification, and commentary. So we've now looked at two responsa, and then now we're about to look at two commentaries. So the Taz and the Bir Hagra are both commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch, which we saw last time. So the Taz is going to say, the Taz is going to go in the direction of the Mahari Brona. So he's going to say what he's talking, actually, whatever. What he's commentating on here is about the practice of putting your talis over your head. But what he's talking about is head covering in general. So he says, nearly sheish iser gamer mitam acher, dahainu kivan shechuku achshav bein ha'akum she'osim kein tamid, tacha sheyoshvim porkim alehem akuva, v'im kein zenichlal b'klal b'chuhutem lo tilichu, כל שכן, בחוק זה שיש טעם לכיסוי הראש, מורה על יראת שמיים, גאי דסוף שבת, whatever, ודאי ירחיק עצמו בזה יותר משאר חוקותיהם. So he's going to say, it's totally prohibited to even take off your hat when you're sitting now, he's talking about. So he's taking it one step further than the Mahari Brona. And he says, the non-Jews, they sit down and they immediately take their hats off, which, by the way, you've probably seen, or like you've seen on TV at least, or something like that. You sit down, you take your hat. I don't know, like my Gemara Rebbe in high school did this, by the way, like wearing a yarmulke under, sit down, take his hat off. And he says that, the Taz says that's Chukaz HaGoyim. Like, when you sit down, you keep your hat on. And especially because Kisui Rosh teaches you about fear of heaven, and we saw this in the end of Shabbat. It was the woman who knew that her child had like a thief kind of spirit to him, like the mother who like the non-Jewish like whatever, something had come to her and said, your son is a ganef, and she said, your son is a thief, and she then taught her son, like, cover your head all the time. Then one time he was sitting under a tree and his head covering blew off, and then he ate someone else's tree, and he grabbed with his teeth the fruit of the tree that wasn't his. So this is a quote from her of like, cover your head so the fear of heaven will be upon you. And the Taz is learning from there, rightfully, that head covering helps you feel the fear of heaven. And to be said, like, even when you're sitting, you have to keep your head covered, and yarchik atzmo b'zeh yoter mishar chukotem. And this is even more important than other of the like Gentile practices that we steer clear of. This one's like really especially important. Okay, so that's the Taz. And the Bir Hagra goes the opposite direction again. So we've seen like one, the other. So the Bir Hagra, now or even later, this is the Vilna Gaon in the 1700s. And he's going to say, Kala demilta ein iser klal barosh megula. Look, the rule of the matter is there's no prohibition at all in uncovering your head for men. Lo'olam rak lifnei hagdolim. But when you're in front of an important person, you should cover your head. And also when you're praying. As nachon hadavar mitzad hamusar. So then it's like a good thing from an ethical perspective to have your head covered. V'shar hayom l'kedoshim shomdim lifnei Hashem tamid. And then the rest of the day, okay, if you're learning all day long, you should have your head covered, but the rest of the day you don't need to, says the Vilna Gaon. An important thing to note about the Vilna Gaon is that he's very much like a first principles kind of thing. So like he's not necessarily reading the Taz and commenting on the Taz, he's looking at the Gemara and the Rishonim, like the medievals who we saw last week, and then coming to a conclusion based on that. much less based on like what are people doing in my milieu. So whereas the Taz is gonna look at like the history of like Ashkenaz Psak and like what did people before me say and what did my contemporaries say, the Vilna Gaon's like much less interested in that general way. Okay, so in terms of men covering their head when they're not davening, what we're left is, and that's generally gonna be the way we feel about like things for men, is that like, right, I think we live in and we'll see like Rav Moshe will hopefully get a chance to look at next week, talks a lot about this, but like head covering for men, I think in like this century where we also like don't experience that much anti-Semitism in America, whatever, like it's become very, very common for men to wear yarmulkes all the time in all sorts of workplaces where even our parents wouldn't necessarily have, but certainly for men who like don't wear their yarmulke when they're like in their workplace, there's a lot on which to rely to do that, including the Vilna Gaon, which is like that's pretty strong backing to not. I'm not here to encourage it, but I'm just saying like, I'm sure many people have seen people who don't, and also in the Sephardic community also, or like the Syrian community, I know a lot of people don't cover their heads full time, men don't wear yarmulkes full time or anything like that, and like there's a lot of halachic literature that would support that. Okay. Transitioning over to women. Does anyone have any questions about what we've seen so far?
I mean, so do we know at all when it became like, kind of like what you were saying, like maybe was it like a kippah, was it like a hat or something? Like, do we know when that kind of started?
So when like the kippah was invented, I at this moment don't know that off the top of my head, but I could figure it out for you by next week. Yeah, good question.
But it wasn't clear that like, it's not like it was always a kippah, it's just like a head covering.
Totally, yeah. Yeah. Because they're not even talking about like what to put on your head, it's a question of like parua rosh, like uncovered head or not uncovered head.
Right. It'd be interesting also to know like, right, certain other sects of religion, like not Jewish, right, they also have like sorts of hair covering. It's kind of cool to know, but that's not what we're focused on.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fabulous question, right? Like, oh, like why do Sikhs do it, whatever, yeah. I don't have that information available to you, but I'm sure the internet does, at least to a certain degree.
Yeah, I think that's the topic of the next series of classes.
Oh, why do other people cover their heads?
World religions and...
Oh, world religions, yes. I don't think Rabbi Walkenfeld's gonna like have prepared. But it could be like a fun like interfaith kind of event to do, to bring in like loads of different people who cover their heads and have them all talk about it. So we could think about putting that
Their
together.
halacha.
What?
We could have them talk about their halacha of hair covering.
Yeah, but, right. If you bring in people who like have a sense of halacha, then yes. Yeah. But there's certainly like, I don't know, I'm in all these like hair wrapping Facebook groups, and it's full of like all these different like Muslims and Christians, because there's apparently some verse in Corinthians that talks about covering your head. So there's like from Christians who cover their heads, and then there's like all of these, whatever, maybe for another time. I have a lot of commentary on these like Facebook groups. There's people who are like in these Facebook groups that are like founded by Orthodox women, where there you have like women who are like polytheists, who are like, my like spirit goddess told me to cover my head, and then like there's such a like environment of respect that everyone just like goes along with it. It's a very interesting kind of phenomenon. Okay, anyways, so over to women. At play in the two of the main texts we're going to look at about women today is the Zohar, which I should have brought last week, or some people would say the week before. Certainly like not 1500. I think everyone can agree the Zohar is before 1500. How much before that? Up for extraordinary debate. But anyways, but the Zohar is playing heavily in these texts, so we're gonna take a look at it. Okay, the Zohar is written in a type of Aramaic that I am not very good at. My experience with the Zohar is quite minimal. This is the Sansino translation. And if it's wrong, I honestly wouldn't know very well, but we'll take a stab. So Amar Rabbi Chizkiah, so Rabbi Chizkiah says, Tunva lete, so a curse should come, Tunva is a curse. Hahu barnash, deshavak leintite, so on the barnash is man, on the man who allows intite his woman, de tidchaze misara dereshe, Levar. So allows the hair of her head to be seen outside. Levar is outside. V'dahu chad me'inon tzniuta deveita. This is one of the rules of modesty of the house. V'itata de'afikat misara dereisha, and a woman who exposes her hair, levar, outside, le'atatakna, I think it's like from the same language as tikkun, like the atatakna bay, to like make herself like beautiful from it, to adorn from it. Garim causes, goremet, right? Maskanta leveta, danger to her house. The garim livinha, and she causes to her children, deloyit chashvun bedara, to be of that they wouldn't be like considered, like lo ba'im b'cheshbon would be the Hebrew way to say that, bedara in their generation. The garim, and she causes mila achara desharia beveta, so an evil spirit to live in her house. Man garim da hahusara de ichaze mirishe levar. So, and all of this is a result from a result of the fact that she leaves her hair out. Uma b'beitei hai kol shekein b'shuka v'kol shekein chatzifuta achera. So, and if that is all caused by her hair being out in her house, how much more so when she's in the marketplace, and how much more so any other kind of inappropriate behavior on behalf of this wife. So we're now seeing not just she could be divorced, she could lose her ketubah, but we're seeing like it causes an evil spirit to reside in your home if inside your home you don't have your hair covered. Okay? The Zohar. And then there's also the opposite, right? So I avid kin. So, and if she does cover her hair even inside her home, then her children will be like olive trees or something, olive plants. Okay. So what does it mean that they'll be like olive plants? Ma zayit bein satva bein bekaita loit avidu tarfoi. So it doesn't shed its leaves in the winter or in the summer. V'tadir ishkach be'chashivut yatir al shar ilani, and it's always more important than any other tree. Kach baha yistalkun b'chashivun al shar b'nei alma. So those who come out of her will have more importance than anyone else in the world. V'lo ela debala mitbarich. Bekala beberchaon de Leah beberchaon de Latata beutera bevanim bivnei banin. So, and also her husband will have blessings from on high and blessings from below, and he will be blessed with riches and children and children's children. So very black and white, shall we say, on the matter of covering your hair inside your home. 1 second, right, and it's a more meaning even the Gemara said, oh, what about inside her own chutzner? Just as a refresher, right? The Gemara in Ketubot said, what about inside her own chutzner? Does she need a kalta inside her chutzner? No, lo hanach bat la'Avram Avinu, right? There won't be any women still married to men if he can divorce her and she'll forfeit her ketubah if he can divorce her for sitting with her head uncovered inside their courtyard. And here the Zohar is saying inside her house in any way, not a single hair. Otherwise she'll be cursed and bring curses into the home. So right, the Gemara, and then this is like a much more extreme. Gabrielle.
Is this the text that like Chabad points to? Because like a lot of them like cover their hair, like even like when no one else is around.
So this would be part of it. We also saw the Gemara in Yoma, which is about what's her name? I'm blanking on her name, but this woman who had 7 sons who were all Kohanim Gedolim, and they say, how did you merit that? And she says, the beams of my home never saw my hair. So you could say both of those, but we'll also see, we'll see also the Chatam Sofer, who has very strong opinions on this matter. We'll get to him at the end of today, and he is also playing into Chabad, but we'll look at the end at, hopefully next week. I promised Elizabeth also we would bring in some Chabad stuff on hair covering, because they're interesting in other ways, right? So like, yes, they cover their hair inside their homes, but also they wear sheitos, and sheitos are not so obvious. So hopefully we'll get there. Okay. So the Maharam al-Shakar is a very interesting man. You'll see like everyone else, where are they from? Okay, like Poland, Ukraine, whatever. So you can tell from his dates, right? 1466 to 1542. What happened to someone who was born in Spain in 1466? Right, so he was expelled from Spain, and then he made his way to Tunisia, Greece, and eventually settled in Egypt. In Egypt, he was like a dayan, a very important member of that community, and most of like the importance of the Maharam al-Shakar comes from his time in Egypt. So we don't have a date on this tshuva, and I think most of his work we don't really have dates for, but I think that we imagine that most of it comes from towards the end of his life. And we certainly know that he's talking about a community that, like we'll see it come up in here, a community that remembers having been exiled from Christian Spain to Arab countries. And that's like a big piece of what he's talking about here. Okay. So, Shayla, the question. שאלת ממני הידיד, אם יש לחוש לאילו הנשים שנהגו לגלות שערן מחוץ לצמתן, להתנאות בו. So my friend asked me whether we need to be worried about those women who practice that they leave some of their hair out of their tzama. So tzama we've sometimes translated as a braid or a bun. We'll see how the Khatam Sofer wants to translate tzama, but for now, we're going to leave it maybe ambiguous as like leave out some hair, lihina opo, to be beautiful by it. Lifi masha shamanu misha hore v'omer ki sheker nachlu imotino hanagot ligloto ki hu iser gamor. So because should we try and convince these women not to do that, because there are some who tell us that it is a total prohibition, and these women inherited this practice from their mothers, but it's completely wrong. And and the Talmud says explicitly, hair on a woman is nakedness, and therefore we have to rebuke them, and we have to warn them not to reveal any hair. Okay, so that's the questioner coming to him, and what do you notice about what the questioner quotes? What Gemara does the questioner quote? Yeah, the Gemara in Brachot, Sarbi She'erva. The hair of women is nakedness, and you can almost always tell, like, right, we saw a whole host of Gemaras on this subject, but it's always, well, which one have we, like, grabbed onto? That's going to tell you something important about the person who's making an argument and where their argument is going. So, I mean, we know what this person's argument is, but all is to say, when we were learning the Gemara, I tried to, like, keep saying, like, if you want to have a really strict opinion, you're going to keep coming back to this one. And that's certainly what's happening with the questioner here. Oh, there are women out there, they're showing some hair. Hair on a woman is nakedness. Shouldn't we teach them that they should not be doing that? That's the question. Yeah.
But just based on our discussion of Gemara, it seems like you could also come up with a rather lenient opinion based on the same Gemara, right? But do you ever see people who use that Gemara not to have a more strict opinion about hair covering? Does that ever happen?
Yeah, he's going to talk about it. We'll see that in a minute. And we also saw the Rambam, who kind of didn't have much to say on that Gemara at all. Like when we looked at his Hilchot Kriyat Shema, for example, he didn't have much to say on it because he interprets. Because what the Rambam does instead is says there's the Gemara in Ketubot says, wait, but isn't hair covering a doraita? And he says, like, yeah, that question is sustained, and it actually pushes the Mishnah's categories all up a step. So right, the Rambam doesn't need the Gemara in Brachot to say Sarbi She'erva, because he reads the Gemara in Ketubot as saying hair in women is nakedness, basically. Or it's a Torah obligation to cover your hair. That he gets that out of Ketubot. He doesn't need Brachot for that. Okay. Cool. So this is quite long. You'll see I brought quite a lot of it. We might do some skipping around, but at least we'll start and we'll see how far we go. Okay, so he says, Ivra, indeed, the ein Beit mechush lo tosar klal, kivan shenagu ligloto b'afil l'kriyat shema. He says, there's no reason to be concerned about that hair at all. You can leave it out, even for kriyat shema. V'hayi desar b'isha erva, shira, and that which we say that hair in a woman is nakedness, lo mayri ela basar shadar chayisha lichsoto. That's only talking about hair that women normally cover. Okay. So ishnaka chahashta, Divrei kulam ein ba'otosar shum chashash iser klal. Demand demukim la be'eshet ish sorry. So it seems like that we have no concern about this hair being in violation of the Gemara and Brachot at all. Because, so if we say that Gemara is only talking about married women who it's prohibited for you to, like feel any kind of attraction towards, particularly while you're saying Kriyat Shema, we're not talking about prohibited women. Like, so you could say two things. One, you could say is like just an interpretation of him is he living in a world where actually all women are covering their hair to a certain degree? That's like kind of ambiguous. But two is like, well, it could be even your wife. Like we're talking about your wife even in your home. And two, right? And the one who says the Gemara in Brachot is talking about your wife, well, lo nesar el kriyat shema. Well, then the only problem is kriyat shema. It's not like all the time. V'davar shedar kol liyot mechusa. And also, even when we're talking about kriyat shema, we're talking about hair that's normally covered. Zemakpid alei va'ati lidei hirhor, because he's gonna like notice that her hair is uncovered more than usual, and that's going to cause him to have sexual thoughts. But if it's hair if it's hair that's normally revealed, then that's not going to bring him to this level of hirhor, and we don't have a problem. And then he goes on to say that, right? Something that's normally uncovered, that he's not going to have any kind of reaction to, then that's permitted. Even when he's reading Shema, and okay, lots of people say this. And then he brings in what we saw this in the Rishonim, that even people who on this same track of like women whose hair is normally showing, so whether it's your wife and it's the amount she's normally showing, or whether it's unmarried women, right, not unmarried women whose hair is usually uncovered, that's totally fine, because that's not going to bring about sexual thoughts, because that's just normal. Okay. And then he quotes all of these Rishonim who agree with him. Baal Mordechai, Rosh, he's already quoted the Ra'avya and the Rashba. Hakol kafi min hagot v'hamekumot. And on this front, this line is, people I think often take it out of context. Like a lot of people who want to say extremely make-up things about hair covering often look at the Maharam al-Shakar, and you see him saying, look, it's all contextual. Hakol kafi min hagot v'hamekumot. Hagot v'hamekumot. Right? Everything is according to the minhag and the place where you're in. But what he means by that is not like all hair can be uncovered. For a married woman, what he means by that is what's going to cause these inappropriate thoughts during Kriyat Shema is someone doing something that would be like contextually distracting because it's different from what she normally would do. Now, of course, meaning he's pretty early, right? We're talking about someone in like, let's say like the 1500s. So like if I in the year 2000 want to write like some wide-ranging permissive thing, I would still want to talk about him, because I could still like take some of his language and some of his argumentation and say, you know, he is looking at this as culturally contextual, and like, yeah, he's writing in Egypt, but look at me, I'm writing in America, and so like I'm going to point to him. But I think you can also read that line like pretty narrowly to be about Kriyat Shema. Okay, and then he quotes also the Rashba and the Ravid, okay, all these people that we saw last week, okay, and the same business, Panei Yadeh Raglea Sarna Michutz Tzamata She'ena Mikasa Ein Chosheshim Lahem Imnei Shuhu Regil Behem, right? So her hands, her feet, like her hair that's coming out of her tzama, her hair that's coming out of her bun or braid or whatever it is, anything that he's used to, we're not going to be concerned about. Right? So, because according to everyone, there's no prohibition in any of this. And they're even explicitly permitted, all these Rishonim listed, even for saying the Shema. And from the fact that all these Rishonim, all these like medievals permit it, that shows that women were revealing hair. And he's going to say Jewish women were showing this kind of hair very early. They were even showing this kind of hair in the times of the Mishnah and the Talmud. And here he brings a very interesting argument. But even when Bisman Shabbat Mikdash Kayam, when the Jews were on their land before the diaspora, when the temple was still standing, he's going to bring an example from Chazkat Batim, and in Chazkat Batim you have a whole list of practices that were changed when the temple was destroyed. So you have all these like mourning practices that the Jewish people kind of collectively took on at the time of the destruction of the temple. And one of them is that like women stopped like doing fancy things with like this part of their hair. And so he's gonna just like we'll read it, but okay, here. So K'di'ita b'hedya perek chazkat batim de'amrinan hatam useh isha kol tachshiteha u'meshayeret davar mo'at. So after the destruction of the temple, women would do all of their normal like makeup and decoration and whatever, but she would leave out one thing. And what is that one thing that she would leave out? Mahi Rav Amar Batzida. So Rav says, they wouldn't do their Batzida, is like the hair of their temples, in that fancy way that they used to do it. And here the Maharam al-Shakar is saying, this is the practice that women today are still doing, that they leave out this part of their hair and they do fancy things with it. That she'll braid off all of her hair, and she'll leave out like the hair in the front. Yored al panea, hanging down over her face. And this is called batzida, kamoshni be'er. And even sometimes they'll put perfume on it or nice oils on it. So it's like bangs or something like that, or like I don't know, like angles or something here, and that would be left out from like a whole updo that they would have, and they would be like perfumed and decorated. So theoretically, after the destruction of the Mikdash, women weren't supposed to do that anymore. They did, and he's saying that's exactly what women are still doing today when they leave out this kind of front hair. So to say, just to go back to like Maharam al-Shakar is often read as this like massive mekel, but what he's really being mekel is this, right? Like this amount, and like bangs in front of your sheitel or whatever, or in front of your scarf. Okay. So now he's gonna bring up the Zohar. So he says, so he says the Zohar is very strict on revealing hair of women. So maybe the Zohar is just talking about hair that is normally covered. Because the Gemara also just uses the language of like hair, but we say about hair, but we say about, when the Gemara says hair, we say, but when you say hair, what you really mean is hair that's normally covered and during Kriyat Shema. And then he says, and if that's not what the Zohar is talking about, anan atalmudav aminhaga samchinan. We don't care, because we follow our minhag and we follow the Talmud and we don't follow the Zohar. And then he says even more than that. And if you're not gonna, he's saying like, if you're not gonna read hair the way that the Rishonim read hair, of hair that's usually covered and Kriyat Shema, I'm gonna yell at you. So let's yell at the people who think that women can't uncover their hair inside their homes because of Sarbi Shera. So literally, let's yell at people who live by the Zohar. That's what he's doing right now. Okay, because without any concept of like what kind of hair are we talking about and which hair, and what halacha we're talking about, i.e. Kriyat Shema. Right, so by their logic, if you're not going to have any context, then you're not going to understand hair to mean what we normally understand hair to mean. You're not going to understand the Gemara and Brachot the way the Rishonim understand the Gemara and Brachot. Then how do you define hair? Hair can mean anything. All of a sudden, women need to cover their eyebrows. So yes, and v'kol sheken paneha yadev raglea, right? Like any body hair on her face and on her hands and on her legs, to have namila maser on it, and she should probably also they should make that prohibited also, and she should maybe have to take that hair off. Umayshna otosar, and what's the difference? Why is that hair? Why, like, if you don't accept my distinctions about what hair means in the Gemara and Brachot, then what distinctions do you have? Like, people have all sorts of hair on their bodies. Who gets to decide? And if you'll say, oh no, that hair is normally, the hair on your arms is normally revealed, well, like the hair on your head is also, like this part of the hair on your head is also normally revealed, so you have no argument, right? So here he gets like heated at people who are like too machmir on this stuff, like Bob and Tzaveach. Let's get together and scream about it. It's kind of, these people are amazing, and I love them. Okay, and then, right, so he kind of goes on here. I'm trying to think whether all this is relevant. Okay, well, now he's going to yell at the person who asked him the question. Right, so remember that the guy who asked the question says, I heard from this person. Right, someone told me that, like, this is the true halacha, and now I'm asking you whether I should act on it, right? So now the Maharam al-Shakar is gonna be really mad about the person who told him that this was the halacha. So he said, Kama lo chalev lo margish hai gavra. The person who told you that, like, he's very unfeeling. The Ka'amar la lahai milta, who told you this thing, the practice has been to have this part of hair revealed since the dawn of time and from the early days. In all the places of the exile that are under Muslim rule, and he shouldn't, and it's not up to him. He doesn't get to tell them not to do that. And how did it even come into his heart to prohibit it? And even if it's not prohibited, and even if it was prohibited, what gives you the authority to tell people this practice, which you've been doing forever, you should stop doing it? He says, let them do what they're doing. Like, it's better, even if it's not nisr, but it's not prohibited, but if it were prohibited, it would be better not to say anything. It would be better for them to, because they're not going to change their ways anyways, by the way, so it would be better for them to be by accident doing what they're doing than for you to tell them, oh, it's prohibited, and then they're going to be on purpose doing what they're doing. Because they're not going to change, but their state of mind determines what level of violation they're actually accomplishing. Like, if they know what they're doing is prohibited, that makes it much worse than if they're just doing it because everyone does it or something like that. So now he's sufficiently yelled at people who tell women to cover their hair inside their homes, and yelled at the person who tried to make this change in the Muslim country from which this question is hailing. And then he's going to say something that I think is fascinating. So if I, that's how, like, in response to literature, that's often how people introduce, like, here's what I'm going to say that's really revolutionary. And what it means was, like, if I didn't have any self-doubt, I would say the following. But it's always something to look for when you read responsa, because that's where the gold is. So even those women who came having been expelled from the land of the Christians are the uncircumcised, because Muslims and Jews are circumcised, right? So Christians are the uncircumcised. That in those Christian lands, they would cover all of their hair. When they were there, right? Don't tell them that, oh, now that you're here, you should not uncover that amount of hair. Like, now that you used to be so from over there, like, keep that level of covering your hair, even though no one here does it. He says, you don't have to tell them that. They're here, they can uncover that amount of hair. And you shouldn't make some argument, oh, their intention is to go back to Spain. Like, first of all, because they were violently expelled from Spain. What? Oh, right, you're just, yeah, okay. But second of all, because like they're here permanently. Like this is what it is. I cut it all out because it's like not relevant to our subject. But he here goes into like this whole business of when can you take on the minhagim of the place that you're in versus the place that you used to live in, and where this comes up in our day and age a lot is like second day Yom Tov. Oh, but I'm Israeli. Oh, I haven't lived in Israel for 30 years, but I'm Israeli, which we like see a lot. So that's like a whole fascinating subject, which he gets into here now for minhagim about hair covering, which is like really interesting, but we're gonna jump over it. But what he's saying is very interesting, which is that same idea of like your minhag over there doesn't need to carry now that you live somewhere else. Like if these rules are contextual, then whose context matters? And he's saying the answer is, do you live here permanently? Then this is the context that matters. And so that becomes like a very, to my mind, like that's a very important question, and he's the first person we've seen who tries to get at an answer to it, which is to say that, first of all, by this admission, these rules are culturally contextual, or these practices at least are culturally contextual, and B, like, who is your culture? Your culture is the place where you're living. And he goes on to say that actually you could even say the women in Spain who were covering every inch of their hair, well, maybe they were covering every inch of their hair because the non-Jewish women around them were covering every inch of their hair. Not because, oh, I'm so from and I read the Zohar and I believe this, but because everyone's covering every inch of their hair. So it wasn't like a religious statement at all, it was just like a common practice, and therefore for sure they don't need to bring it with them. But then he just ends with this nice bit. It's like the last line of the English on page 4, or in the top of the Hebrew on page 5. Umasei imotan hakdosha beyadehem. The actions of their holy mothers are in their hands when they don't cover here. Kamosha ochachnu, as we've proven from the Gemara in Chazkat Abatin, uvekama vekama dvarim hikilu rabbatinu zal kedei shelo titkana isha ba'ala. And also, there's all sorts of times where we're permissive so that women will be attractive to their husbands. Ve'in tzorech ba'orech, and I don't need to say more about that. And then he signs it off in this like beautiful ne'um ha'me'utaf ba'avatcha. It signs the one who is like enraptured with love for you, and whose heart like yearns for you. Anyways, Moshe al Sheker. Okay. Any questions about the Maharam al Sheker? He's pretty good, right? Like that's like, this is, we're moving now. Like this is very interesting. Like we have some cultural context. We have people pushing back on the Zohar, saying yes, the Zohar says this, but like we have practices that are not that, and our practices are right. We have like interesting reads of the Gemara and Brachot, right? That you were asking about. Well, like does anyone ever bring it to be Miguel? And here you have him exactly doing that. You have him saying it's only about hair that's normally covered, and it's only about when you're saying Kriyat Shema. And that then kind of blows to pieces Sar Beisha Erva, which he's purposefully kind of doing. But what he's not saying is, oh, you don't need to cover your hair at all. But the question you can then ask on him is like, well, what if he were living in a cultural context where women weren't covering their hair at all, would this have been different? Right? Like he's in Egypt, he's in a Muslim society, so like it's not that, like the standard that he's like asking about is not uncovered versus covered, it's covered to here versus covered to here. And you've definitely seen, or at least like I've definitely seen like women in like of like Pakistani origin or whatever who like wear a scarf but it comes to here, and that's like normal. That's from that's like yeah.
So I don't know if I missed it or not. So what's the source that he relies on for saying that women do need to be covering their hair in some sense? Is it
he doesn't even have to make an argument for it. That's kind of what I'm saying. Like he's not arguing that. That's why he almost doesn't at all bring up the Gemara in Ketubot. Like his argument is not cover, because he doesn't need to be making that argument for whatever reason, probably having to do with the women who he's talking about. It's and that wasn't the question. The question that was posed was, women are only covering their hair to here, instead of covering their hair to here, can I allow it, or do I need to go after them? And he's saying, you don't need to go after them. You should allow it, and it's good.
But yeah, so that makes sense to me, but is that why one could read this and say that, because he like reads the Gemara and Brachot to say that it's only hair that's like in the context of Shema, and it's the hair that's normally covered, that you can then gather from this, like, oh, maybe he's saying that that's the only thing, that's the only context in this type of hair that halakhically needs to be covered, and anything else is.
You totally could read him that way. I think, like, to me, the most obvious read is a limited one, but if you're looking for someone who does not make a positive argument for, like, you must cover your hair, he would be that, yes.
Okay, but we do think that the takeaway from this is that he believes that, like something like that, you like, what's the cultural norm for how women cover your hair in this part of the world, and, like, that's basically what we go with. Just gather from, like...
He doesn't have any language of doraita or not, but he's also not, he's not even asking the question. Like, the question isn't relevant. Because it seems like either, right, you could say two, right, you're making an argument from silence, so you could say two ways. One is that he doesn't believe that there's a doraita, which is why he doesn't talk about it. Or two, he believes that of the two options under discussion, which are here or here, both of them fulfill the doraita. Yeah. And like, I guess you could make that argument from silence in either direction. Okay, oh shoot, we're already over time. We haven't even gotten to the Chasam Sofer yet. Okay, we'll look at the Chasam Sofer quickly. Okay, so the Magen Avraham, here's where it gets exciting, because Maharam al-Shakir is in Egypt, but when he gets brought into the Magen Avraham, he gets brought into Ashkenaz. So the Magen Avraham is in Poland 1630s, or he's born in 1630s, and he's like very popular and influential. And he brings in the Maharam al-Shakir. So he says, he quotes, he's a commentator. So right, we just saw a response to him, now we're looking at a commentary. He says, Regilim latzit michutz. He's touching on the Ramah, we saw last week, okay. Katav Rav Moshe al-Shakir, Utan nashim ha'ba'um eretzot she'ein darkan liglotan, l'makom she'darkan liglotam, mutarim liglotam im ein datan lachzor. So women who come from a place where they don't show any hair to a place where they do show some hair, they can show some hair as long as they're not intending to return where they came from. And then, right, he quotes, and then he says, okay, and like if they're in their courtyard, then they can go out totally uncovered. But the Zohar said, Hachmir me'od, this is the last line of Magen Avraham, the Zohar, Hachmir me'od, shelo yir'eh shum sera me'isha. The Zohar says, no hair of woman should be seen ever, v'chein ro'ei linhog. And that's a good thing to follow. So he brings in the Maharam al-Shakir, he says, in your courtyard, you don't have to cover your hair at all, but there's the Zohar, and that's how we practice. But the fact that he brings it in at all, he quotes this Egyptian guy, like that's not necessarily 100% standard practice. Maharam al-Shakir does appear at like a number of places, but like this is, you know, once the Magen Avraham brings him in, like you've made it to Ashkenaz. So now he's here. So and then the Khatam Sofer, who's like kind of, I don't know, like 2 generations, whatever, like coming after the Magen Avraham. The Magen Avraham is already an authority for the Khatam Sofer. He feels like, oh no, the Khatam Sofer, Magen Avraham introduced like unclarity into our custom, and that's very scary. So look at how he opens. I came here to clarify the rules about women's hair, because they got tangled, they got messed up. The hair, it kind of sounds like the hair got messed up. In the words of the Magen Avraham. The Khatam Sofer is like a master of puns. Like whenever you find a pun in the Khatam Sofer, he means it. But he's like an extremely conservative, like lowercase c conservative posing, but he's also, you gotta appreciate him for what he's good at. And he's a brilliant halachist, obviously. Okay. So he is going to say, he basically says, first of all, your tzama, he's going to say, oh, hair that's outside of your tzama? Yeah, tzama is this like undercover thing that you put on your, tzama is like the first level of covering that you put on your hair. And that is what is going to like tamp down most of your hair. And when you leave your house, you're going to put something on top of that. You're going to wear a hat on top of this scarf that you've tied tightly around your hair. So this is where we get, like, there's a lot of sects of Hasidim where you'll see women wearing shaitels and then something on top of their shaitel, like a headband or like a little hat thing. So that like double covering, there's a lot of Hasidim who double cover for men also, you'll see, like kippah and a hat, or like even like kippahs with 2 levels in them, sometimes people talk about as like a double cover. So he's into the double cover for women also. Like some of the velvet kippahs have like a lining, whatever, anyways. So he's gonna say, we had understood until Chatam Sofer, we'd been reading Tama as like a bun or a braid, and he's saying, no, Tama is a hat that like covers all your hair and holds it down. And then when you go, and so what's hair that's outside of your Tama? Hair outside of your Tama is like literally like one or two hairs that like squiggle their way out of your Tama, and you're wearing a hat on top just to make sure no one ever sees those like one or two hairs. And he learns that out from like a really, we're not going to go into it, no one has time for this, but like he reads like half a pasuk in Shir HaShirim with like, to like be talking about, he puts it at Nachna in the wrong place in a pasuk in Shir HaShirim to learn that out, which is like an interesting move. Okay, so he just says, "Shemuvad kovash al rosha od yishla tamat beged hamitzamtzim hasa'ar shelu yivatz b'tzu lachutz." So on top of the hat that's on her head, she also has this tamat beged, this like veil or like kerchief or whatever that's mitzamtzim hasa'ar, that's holding her hair down so that it won't come out. And that little bit, mikol I'm at the very bottom, like the bottom 3 lines of the Hebrew on page 5. Mikol makol otam ma'at she'ir charlatzamtzim. And so now he's right, that little hair that you can't like compress through your kerchief. He's understanding the Rashba to mean it's not talking about, oh, like I have some hair sticking out of my bun or some hair in the front coming out of my braid. That's how the Maharam al-Shakar is reading it. Like hair that's not in your tzama, that's this stuff. He's saying, no, it's those little bits that can't be held down by your kerchief. That's what we're talking about, and that's what's permitted to read Kriyat Shema in here, but nothing else. Okay, so that's that, and then he says, if you go out wearing just a scarf and not a hat over your scarf, that's a violation of Dat Yehudi. So now, like, Kalta has now become like a full-on scarf, but you're single covered instead of double covered. He's going to say that's a violation of Dat Yehudi, and he says, oh, it's a machloket in the Rishonim, but like, we go by the most machmir of them. And then he does a pretty reasonable job of summarizing the Maharam al-Shakar, and he says, and so now you can see in the English, I have like brackets, summarizes Maharam al-Shakar. So in the Hebrew, it's like here-ish, and there's like a dot towards the end of the line. In the Hebrew it says, Omnam Mishchuvat Maharam al-Shakar. So here's where he gets to his real point. Haonam ba'artzotinu sha'umot yotzot pru'ei rosh, right? So Maharam al-Shakar is writing in Egypt. We're now in Hungary. I don't think I even put that on here, but yeah. Chatam Sofer is in Hungary. We're now in Hungary. All the non-Jews are going about with their hair uncovered. The imotenu lo yatu, but our mothers, they go with their hair uncovered. Our mothers didn't go with their hair uncovered. V'nizharu ma'od, and they were so careful to cover their hair. V'chashu l'divrei hazohar, and they were careful about the words of the Zohar. V'ikpidu al zam ma'od, and they were super careful about it. Av agav de'ilu hayinu omdim l'minyan l'gvo halacha, hayinu omrim do'otah shura mevor b'shas laheter. So even if you said to me like blank slate, no history, no historic Hungarian women who have always covered their hair, and said, Mr. Chatam Sofer, what is the halacha, just reading the Gemara? I might have said, yes, your argument about the Gemara and Cheskat Abatim that would permit this hair to be out, I might have said, yes, you can leave that out. Right? However, the practice is like the Zohar, and on this, the Morinu Harav Stein, who I spent a while today trying to figure out who this person was, seems like he wrote a commentary on the Smag, and that he gets quoted a good amount by like Ashkenaz poskim, so interesting. So he says, Minhagu ker halacha, that practice can uproot halacha, v'nesa halacha kavua, and the practice then becomes the permanent halacha. So for example, there's places where outside books, and he's going to say, what are Sefer Chitonim, Hainu Masachet Sofrim. So for example, we saw Masachet Sofrim, that's where we get the don't say the name of God without your head covered. That came from Masachet Sofrim. He's going to say, sometimes something we learn from there, it'll catch on and it'll override what we learn in the Gemara, or something in a Midrash, or a Psita, or a Zohar. Oto minhag uker halacha, that practice will uproot halacha v'ne'asa halacha rovacha b'Yisrael, and it'll become the widespread halacha in Israel. Haklal hayotze kol shum sar b'shum makom baroshu padachat b'nesua. Any hair in any part of the head or the forehead of a married woman, afilu b'chadara, even in her room, ervahi, that is prohibited nakedness. Im lo sheyesh la mipachat berosha, if she is not wearing a kerchief over it. V'shuk v'chatzer shel rabim gam kova, and when she's outside in the marketplace or she is in a courtyard with lots of other people, then there needs to be not just this kerchief but another hat on top of it. V'onam b'shura sa'ar shebein ozen lepadachat ve'ina mekulat v'sad b'sid makom shenagdu ina erva. So even though maybe that this hair isn't normally waxed off and it's not normally braided, so maybe we won't say that's exactly nakedness, but uva in our country minhag al pi zohar oker halacha, where the minhag of the Zohar has uprooted the halacha. So he'll say, like, there's no ein kan machloket, and there's no room for debate on this. Im ken iser gamorhu, and it's absolutely prohibited. V'yish lachutz lerevutzot ha'ila hamor bezohar, and we should be very careful about the curses that are described by the Zohar. Umisha chafetz bebracha yarchik mimena, and whoever wants blessing in their home should be very careful about these principles. So we've seen a total sway towards like extreme frumkeit about head covering in the Khatam Sofer, and he is like a very important posek. Like the Haredi community looks to the Khatam Sofer a lot, and and the Khatam Sofer was really like a transitional figure. Like since the Khatam Sofer, like everyone's like perpetually reacting to the Khatam Sofer in all sorts of areas of halacha. And like in his defense, so I'll just say like a few favorite Khatam Sofer highlights we really benefit from. The Khatam Sofer was like a game changer in trigger warning, in like the world of suicide. So the Khatam Sofer is the one who says, if someone commits suicide, we should assume that at the last minute they felt bad about it, and therefore we like give them a full Jewish burial and a full shiva and everything else. Like until then, like the halacha wasn't clear on that. So there's a few things that the Khatam Sofer changed, like with his extraordinary authority, that did like real good for the Jews. So we shouldn't feel, I don't want you to go home feeling like, oh, Khatam Sofer, he's the worst. But in this case, like he's looking at his community. Also, like he really believes, he coined the term Chadash Asur Min HaTorah, which is another pun. It's a great pun, right? So Chadash, as in Chadash and Yashan, like new grain that you haven't, that since it was planted, you have not had the Omer has not been waved over it. So that is the Chadash that is prohibited in the Torah. But what he means by Chadash Asur Min HaTorah is anything new is prohibited in the Torah. So he's like just very like he would wear with pride the label of a conservative. Like that is literally what he was. And in this you're seeing it very strongly. Like this language of like minhag oker halacha, practice like overrides like what you can actually learn out from the Gemara, like that is like strong language, and what that comes from is this like deep conservatism of like what these women do, and it's countercultural, and we have to strengthen it, and it's right, and everywhere where we live, women are going about with their heads uncovered, but our like Shena Meidalas go with their heads covered, and that is like the most important thing and beautiful. So that's like the project that he's engaged with. So we will see how this like carries forward into our own day next week. If you want to do yourself a favor and just assume that we'll go half an hour longer next week, that might be a fair assumption. There's like a lot to get through, but I think this like you've kind of like seen like the way what I wanted to do in terms of going deeply into these like four arguments, so two, like an argument each way for men and an argument in two different directions for women, is to say like this project of which are my texts? Which of them are, how am I going to read my text? How am I going to see authority? Where does authority come from? All of that plays into this responsa literature in a way that I hope those of you who have been following since the beginning have really seen, right? Because, and these people also, like, they're tipping their cards in a big way. The Khatam Sofer to say, that to tell this whole story about the women in Hungary and how they've worked so hard to cover their hair when the rest of the culture does, like, that tells you something about what matters to him. And okay, we follow the Zohar because, why? Because everyone follows the Zohar. Whereas, like, the Maharam al-Shakir is going to be like, what is this Zohar? I follow the Talmud, and here's my read of the Talmud, and that's how I can justify what all of these women are doing through like enormous Talmudic creativity. So just to give you a taste also of like how the halachic process works and how we can take the complexity of the Gemara and Rishonim which we've seen so far and the value that we place on what the Jews are doing and kind of have it all come together in kind of 4 very different ways that we saw today. That was the goal. Okay, see you next week. We're at 7:30 again next week. And if you're willing to stay until 9, I appreciate it. Okay.
We should change the time.
Yeah, maybe I'll like make it clear on the publicity. Yeah.